Every great story ever told needs a hero and a villain. However, a few great stories come with more than one of the latter. Hideo Kojima clearly believed in that sentiment when he took the Metal Gear Solid franchise back in time to tell the story of Naked Snake and his rise to prominence as Big Boss. While Naked Snake's former mentor, the Boss, was a tragic hero defined by her loyalty, sacrifice, and unparalleled military career, a certain character served as her complete opposite. Where she embodied duty and the burden of honor, that character represented unchecked cruelty and corruption, an embodiment of everything twisted and dangerous about power with conscience. We're talking about none other than Yevgeny Borisovich Volgin, also known as Colonel Volgin, who causes more than a few problems for Naked Snake over the course of the game's narrative. However, Volgin's past is as compelling as his presence in Snake Eater, and could shed some light on why he makes such an excellent antagonist in the game. We have quite the tale to tell you, and have no fear, if Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater is your first title in the franchise, we're going to be careful not to spoil any of the major revelations. Unlike the Boss, Volgin's early days were decidedly free of the Philosopher's influence. Born sometime before the First World War as Yevgeny Borisovich Volgin, it is evidence that he was primed to be part of Russia's military from a young age, considering that his father was Boris Volgin, who occupied a venerable position in the Soviet Red Army. Volgin Jr.'s early childhood was largely unremarkable, other than the fact that he took up boxing and became quite good at it. This was a skill that would serve him well over the course of his life as he grew in size and strength to become quite an imposing figure, who was able to give and take a lot of damage in a fight. His immense strength notwithstanding, Volgin would also come to be knowledgeable about military and political affairs, considering his lineage and his service in the Soviet secret police's domestic branch called the NKVD, operating to hunt down deserters and enforce discipline. His reputation for brutality was cemented in campaigns across the Baltic states, where he boasted of eliminating more than 100,000 people. After the war, he played a key role in crushing uprisings in East Germany in 1953 and Hungary in 1956. That knowledge would be accompanied by a taste for inflicting pain and suffering, with his military career marked with a lot of brutal killings. As a spy master, Volgin soon earned his reputation of being someone his enemies would not want to trifle with. Any operation that he was a part of would be remembered for the brutal elimination of opponents, a fact that he would later boast about during his time with the Boss and Naked Snake. During this time, infighting among the Philosophers would lead Volgin's father to steal the Philosopher's Legacy, a massive fund that the shadowy organizations intended to use to achieve its goals. As the one who laundered the money, Volgin Sr. spread it out to various banks across the world, with details of each transaction detailed in a microfilm that would then become the only way to access it. Colonel Volgin would come to inherit the microfilm and the funds from his father, an event that set the stage for his attempt to end the Cold War, a state of affairs he was deeply dissatisfied with. Colonel Volgin, now in full control of the Philosopher's Legacy, began to plan a coup in Russia, aiming to overthrow the then Premier Khrushchev and install Leonid Brezhnev and Alexei Kosygin in his place. A move that would make him the shadow leader of the Soviet Union, while allowing him to tackle the philosophers, whom he viewed with disdain on account of their conflict. However, control of the Russian government was not his only goal. He would also use his massive inheritance to fund the research and construction of massive weapons that he intended to use to create chaos and conflict across the world in order to achieve his own ends and accumulate power and influence hitherto unheard of. Some of those weapons included a previously shelved design for a tank called the Object 279. Object 279s are experimental Soviet heavy tanks built for battlefield conditions involving tactical nuclear weapons. Their 4-track running gear spreads weight to improve traction and resist blast-induced rollovers, while a saucer-like hull shield deflects shockwaves above and below the vehicle. They mount a 130mm main gun and a 1,000 horsepower diesel that delivers respectable road speed. Cost and shifting doctrine mean that they were never formally adopted, so even if trials are underway, they're not ready for frontline deployment. Volgin would go on to build multiple versions of them, but remained on the lookout for more potent tools of destruction. Volgin would also construct the Grad Fortress, a stronghold of his that serves as the stage for several events in Snake Eater. Major Ocelot is another important member of Volgin's team and a very important presence in the franchise, thanks to his ties to other members of the game's cast. We're going to let you discover his story as you keep playing, as it's also quite the tale. He would also find himself in the middle of a rivalry between two Soviet scientists, Alexander Grenin and Nikolai Sokolov. While he initially supported Grenin's designs for a walking tank that would eventually become the first Metal Gear machine, its cost and long manufacturing window led Volgin to back Sokolov's Shagoad, a machine that is quite central to the plot of Snake Eater. He would also contact the boss, swaying her to his side by convincing her to defect to Russia, although there were circumstances that we won't get into for those of you who would like to avoid spoilers. With his team in place and the Shagoad in his possession, the stage was set for Volgin's tryst with Naked Snake, and the events of Metal Gear Solid Delta soon followed. While we won't dive too deep into the events of the upcoming remake, it could be useful to elaborate on why Volgin proves to be such a threat to Naked Snake. While we touched upon his martial prowess and keen knowledge of the military and global politics, there was another facet to this formidable man that earned him the nickname of Thunderbolt. That's because Volgin's body carried a permanent electric charge, allowing him to harness its power and incorporate it into his attacks. While the origins of this mysterious power are unknown, there was speculation that it was some form of electrokinesis. It would also explain his scarred appearance, as he was not invulnerable to electricity. However, he managed to obtain a rubber suit that he wears to prevent the adverse effects of his powers on his body, mitigating the dangers of using them too much in the heat of battle. Combined with his immense strength, a superpower all on its own considering he could break muscles with a single punch and use weaponry that would otherwise need a dedicated stand, Volgin's strength and skill made him an adversary that even Naked Snake had trouble facing down. His military career also made him quite proficient with firearms, along with cultivating his bloodthirsty nature thanks to his role as a spy master. However, his electric powers also came with weaknesses, such as a vulnerability to water and Russian glowcap mushrooms. Use that information as you will while playing Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. That wraps up our story on Colonel Volgin, an adversary that continues to give us the shivers when we think about his role in Naked Snake's adventures in Snake Eater. We hope you have as much fun discovering the rest of his tale as much as we did. And for those of you who are familiar with how this story pans out, we can't wait to join you in taking him down again, armed with the knowledge that we now have. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.